Hey folks, Matt here. I am back with another kitchen counter conversation with myself. However, this time I'm not at my kitchen counter. I am in Nashville, Tennessee. By the time this podcast is released, I will have left Nashville. Unfortunately, if you're listening to this and you live in Nashville and you were hoping we could go out and eat some barbecue tonight, I missed you by a couple days. But I have had my fill of Nashville vacation rental magic. Had the chance to see a number of Inner Circle members, including David Ngotti and Wes Melton, John Oden, who was featured in season 1 of the show along with his wife, Ellen. And I am actually staying at Megan McCrae, not McCrea, as I recently learned. I'm staying at Megan McCrae's vacation rental, which is called The Nook. And it is a brilliant little piece of Nashville. And I had the chance to see Megan, who is not only a vacation rental owner and manager, but also the president of the local advocacy group, NASTRA. I had the chance to see Megan in action as she hosted a NASTRA event. And it was a resounding success and just an incredible reminder of how people with very little training and very little experience in this industry are somehow able to rally troops and achieve historic victories. The individuals that I met in Nashville who have stepped up to support Megan's leadership are all just remarkable people. So it was a pleasure to see everybody here in town. Today I wanted to address an article that I published on VRMB last week and that we will be publishing an update to below this audio file if you're looking at the blog. And it has to do with a VRMB laboratory project. This is the department of VRMB. Not a whole lot of people know this. That invests in all kinds of weird projects that have no clear outcome and no real specific goal or purpose in mind. And we do so with the full confidence that it is the right thing to do. And that is the sole driving force behind VRMB laboratory experiments. Candidly, a handful of them never see the light of day. But there are also some of them that really seem to catch on. And one of those is what we affectionately refer to as the property management software Selector tool. And I wish we had a better name for it. The PMS tool is probably worse. And so in true limited edition naming fashion, we are going long form and calling this exactly what it is. And this project started back in April. For those of you who are on the VRMB list, you would have received an email from me releasing the tool privately. We did not ever publish the link anywhere online. And the summary of the project was that there's an Inner Circle member named Terry Whyte who just absolutely loves vacation rental software. He enjoys doing demos. He loves seeing all the different updates. It's just something that he really enjoys. And that is not true about most people. So as you might imagine, Terry, upon developing this sort of wisdom about the vacation rental software market, began getting a lot of questions from individuals saying, what software do you recommend for me? Terry also published an article on the VRMB blog that was basically, how to choose the right vacation rental software. And it was a very successful post. And I think that sort of fanned the flames in a way. But more and more people started reaching out and asking Terry for his suggestions. And Terry, like a lot of Inner Circle members, is just an inherently generous person with a huge heart. And he just began helping people without any questions. And I saw it happening over and over and over and over again just because I was copied on these emails. And I realized that the process was inefficient. Terry was sitting down asking the same kinds of questions to these individuals over and over and over again. They were giving the same kinds of combinations of answers, and Terry was then recommending the same kinds of suggestions of pieces of software that could solve that individual's challenges. It was working that way because that was the only way. But when I proposed to Terry that we should actually come up with a more streamlined way to compile his knowledge and share it with individuals, he was excited. And so we went about archiving all of Terry's rankings of each of the top 30 property management softwares on the market. And we used our own kind of proprietary list of 25 features that we felt were most important within those property software management softwares. If you have demoed a property management software, you know that all these different features work differently under different umbrellas. And so we decided to sort of aim to create some kind of benchmark list and to rank each of those features on our own little scale. And then to use a tool called Qualtrics, which is sort of enterprise software that we had customized for this purpose, and to present to independent owners and managers a survey of sorts, basically asking individuals to prioritize a handful of needs. And these needs were not specifically corresponding with the factors, but they were important questions that we needed to know before making any kinds of suggestions. And what this tool would do, in theory, was match your needs with the software that seems to be doing that best. And our first release of the tool to the private VRMB community almost immediately took off. I remember being in an airport in Spain when I hit the send button. And before I even took off on the plane, the tool had amassed 100 or 200 completions. If that was any indicator that we were onto something, it was. And there's a couple things to keep in mind about this first set of data. The first is that this is a pilot program. It is not by any means perfect. It is our best attempt to solve a very serious problem, but it is a living project. And we are now able to update our matrix on a regular basis. We're able to update the algorithm that matches your priorities with the right software. We're able to do this and improve all of these features on a real-time basis, and that we will be improving, but that of course it is not perfect, and that any suggestions that you are presented with should be ideas for you to investigate, not de facto solutions. We, of course, also fully recognize that as a beta program, we were going to need to oversee all of the automated suggestions. And so we basically built into the delivery process a human assessment in which Terry or myself, almost always Terry, to be honest, Terry knows it way better than I do, would look over and ensure that the suggestions were indeed accurate, and in some cases, if there were too many suggestions based on the individual's answers, removing the ones that we did not feel were necessary. The other few things to keep in mind about this first round of feedback from users was that we don't use any kind of affiliate agreements. We do not receive any kind of compensation from any of these software companies to produce this project. That, I think, is key to its transparency and just the general educational nature of the project. We also are open to demoing new property management softwares. We got most of the ones that anyone has ever heard of that have been on the market for some time. But if you are a new property management software and feel like you are punching at the level of some of the best options on the market, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, know that we have indeed done anonymous demos with your company like a secret shopper, and we have compiled your rankings, and that we will continue to do demos over the course of the next year and update those rankings accordingly. So as all these feedback, all this data became pouring into the system, we started receiving some specific comments that validated that we were on the right track. So the first kind of comment was, I had never heard of several of the softwares that are on this suggestions list. Thank you so much. I'm off to do some demos. Another kind of response was these suggestions validated what I thought I should be using. In fact, it gave me the highest percentage match with the software that I personally, after many hours of demos, had determined already to be right for me. The other kind was for individuals who were in truly hard decision-making positions for their company. The one that I remember said, "This could not have come at a better time. Just this morning, we made the decision to part ways with our longtime property management software, and you made our next steps dramatically easier." So these are all really great things to hear. As an experiment, you want not only to see that the thing seems to be working as it should, but also that users are actually benefiting from it. And as a very, very early stage, Project 1.0, this was all very good information for us. There was some really interesting trends that were taking place in all of the user completions. Keep in mind, these are owners and managers who range from 1 property to 1,000. And before I get Terry here onto the line to discuss what we felt were some of the best softwares of the era, I wanted to share some of the trends that Terry noticed about the user input. And the first was that customized rates, the ability to customize your rates across properties, was a very important priority to managers with 20 plus properties. That is to say that if you have less than 20 properties, customized rates probably are not quite as high on the totem pole. And by the way, it was really nice to see that people were being honest with the priority rankings. I think it would be very easy to just go through and say all of these are highly important to me. But of course, there is no perfect software solution yet. And in this particular case, being honest and being balanced, realistic about your expectations is a very good thing. Another one that was only important to property managers with more than 20 properties was a unified inbox, a singular place within the property management software where you could send and receive emails. Otherwise, you're using an external email platform. Another one that was only important to 20 plus properties was the owner guest portal. This is a place within the software where both guests and owners can log in and see important information. And again, not something that you should be worried about if you only have 3 or 1 or 13 even properties. Trust accounting, interestingly, was important to all owners or managers regardless of property count. This was a fantastic trend to observe. Shows that the people that take this property management software Selector tool, I giggle every time I say that long name, proof that they are educated and aware of their surroundings. And if you are not familiar with trust accounting, I'm not going to dig into it here, but this should be a nice little reminder that you should look into it and familiarize yourself with it. Another question that garnered very little difference across property count was budget. We asked the question, if we are able to provide the right solution to you, are you on a strict budget? Can you more or less pay whatever it takes to get the job done? And interestingly, we found that almost everybody was willing to pay what it took to get the job done. And fortunately, the solutions that are designed for smaller property managers are more affordable, and some of the bigger ones that are more expensive, we are now, with that question built into the algorithm, able to avoid recommending a property management software that is beyond one's budget. There were a couple little concerning trends that we just wanted to point out. One was that a surprising amount of people said that automation was not important in their property management software, and Terry thought this was kind of scary because anybody who has used a property management software before knows that once you use it, you can never go back. And if you're currently using spreadsheets, know that even the simplest, most affordable of property management softwares will make your life so much easier. So if you were one of those individuals who answered not important, please reconsider. Another concerning trend worth mentioning was very few people answered that booking source was important. That a lot of people answered that booking source was not important in their property management software. And for us, that basically meant that these individuals didn't care to know where all their different bookings were coming from. And that's a concern, because if you don't know where all your different bookings are coming from, you are not able to make more realistic investments further into any given platform or out of any given platform. And ultimately, you don't have the map. You're not able to lift up the hood and make the adjustments necessary when those results begin to change. The third trend of concern was how few people ranked a housekeeping module. The amount of people that ranked a housekeeping module as not important. Terry and I can't emphasize enough how huge of a challenge housekeeping is in this industry and to every single one of us. And therefore, a proper module within the property management software that alleviates a lot of those friction points is worth its weight in gold. Two quick gaps. These are things that users seem to rank as high priority, but were not really available too heavily on the market. One was text messaging. It's one of the most simple and popular ways to communicate with guests. And it was not a function built into many of the softwares out there. Terry's going to touch on one that he likes especially for this purpose alone. The other gap that we found is how surprising it was to have a property management software that had a good CRM built in. Terry will also share how he feels a CRM as the main pillar of a property management software is very much the model of the future. And again, there was only a small handful, and if I'm not mistaken, one standout software that had a CRM at its very core. As these completions for this property management software selector tool begin to roll in even further, even when we released these summary takeaways last week, we had another 100 or 200 within the span of a day or two. We will continue to improve the algorithm. We will continue to improve the tool. We will continue to deliver more tailored suggestions. And I would just like to close this portion of the conversation with myself, because actually I will next be bringing Terry in, and it will not be with myself anymore. I would just like to conclude this portion of the conversation with the reminder that while we are indeed trying to solve a very complex challenge, and that is the confusing landscape of property management softwares out there and identifying the one that is right for you, while we are indeed putting forth our absolute best effort, I cannot tell you how many hours I have spent with Terry on the phone in the morning over coffee and breakfast trying to figure this dang thing out. While we are very content with all of the suggestions and the results thus far, even the best tool that we could possibly produce is not a substitute for your own decision making, for your interpretation of the information, and for your demos with several new options that may make your business more efficient, may make your business more independent, may ultimately be the shift that takes your business to the next level. But before Terry comes on, I wanted to briefly thank the sponsor of this podcast, Point Central, who is the home automation specialists of our industry. The way this partnership came to be was quite courageous, I would say, on behalf of the Point Central team. Podcasting is a notoriously difficult kind of medium to measure. We're presented with this metric that's called downloads, that covers devices and applications and listening actions. And you don't really get to see how long people are listening to the podcast for, what they are doing with the information. And because you can't quantify it nearly as well as you would like, it becomes selling the sponsorship becomes kind of challenging. You really need a sponsor who believes in the broader vision, that believes it's the right thing to do. And when I sat down with Sean and his team at Point Central, we basically agreed that while podcasting may not be the get-rich-quick scheme that we wish, it is something that makes the industry more sustainable. Sitting down and interviewing the leading owners and managers, sitting down and sharing the results of experiments like the property management software Selector tool, and sharing that information freely with owners and managers throughout the world, that we felt was something that was important for the industry as a whole. So I'd like to thank Point Central for committing to that future. You can head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB to take a demo with one of Sean's team members. You will also get HVAC Analytics, which is a neat tool that will allow you to see when your HVAC is acting up and basically avoid having it die when a guest is sitting there in heat. So that is a good little bonus. Thanks to Sean and his entire team. And let's bring on the esteemed, the knowledgeable, the wise Terry Whyte. How are you, Terry?
I'm very good, Matt. How are you?
I am great. Where are you?
I'm sitting in my office in Toronto, Canada, looking at my computer.
Looking at your computer. You spend a lot of time at your computer, my friend.
I spend almost every day from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. in front of my computer.
And for those who don't know Terry, share real briefly your vacation rental business in Florida, if people don't know.
My wife and I, we own 2 properties on Anna Maria Island. That's on Florida's Gulf Coast, mid-coast on the west side there. And I also manage 30 properties on Anna Maria Island as well. I've got a few in the mountains in North Carolina, but primarily they're all on an island on Florida's Gulf Coast.
And I had never been to Anna Maria Island up until I went to visit Nancy and did an episode of the show. And it is absolutely stunning out there. I can see why you were attracted to it. And for those who don't know this whole backstory, Terry loves software. He's one of the few people I know that just takes great pleasure in doing demos and staying updated on all of the new things in our space. Why do you love software so much, out of curiosity?
Well, I tried to run my business with spreadsheets and calendars, and it was simply impossible. So something really, after I joined the Inner Circle, I asked you what you use for software, and you said reservation
key. I remember that.
I didn't even demo anything else. I just said, it works for you, it works for me. So I started using it for a year, but something really significant happened, and that was Best Match. And that's where the Best Match was made for people like me, because I was gaming the system, feeding one property, feeding another 10, and then my calendars were never up to date. And I knew I had to find a new business model. But what really saved me was, after using Reservation Key for a year, I knew I needed a new PMS. I needed a new website. I needed a new payment processor. I had to start from scratch. But because I had experience, 1 year of experience using software, I knew what I needed and I knew where to go find it.
And you started using what was your next software step?
I've been using Cyrus for 4 years, and it was the best decision that I've made.
And you did, I would say, the most due diligence of anyone that I have ever met. And we actually originally collaborated on the blog post. Do you remember that?
I do.
Summarize that
yes.
for folks who haven't read it, and then I'll, of course, post the link below.
It was my experience choosing a new, robust software, and it was just step by step how I broke it down, and everything that I could possibly think of in a PMS, and I broke it down in the finest detail.
And people loved that post. I remember the amount of comments and the amount of emails you started getting. I remember, was it Heather asked you to speak about it on one of her podcasts?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think, and you kind of became this sort of guru of vacation rental software, quite simply because you had demoed and understood more of the software solutions than anybody else out there. And as your leadership in the inner circle, those of you who are listening who are not members of the inner circle, Terry is always available for any kinds of questions in there. And I started to notice lots of people asking you for your suggestions about what software they should be using. And I also started to notice that you were asking the same questions over and over again. They were giving the same kinds of combinations of answers over and over again. And you were giving more or less the same suggestions over and over again. And that was sort of the impetus for this project together. It pained me to see you, Terry, as such a generous soul giving away all of this great information. I thought at the absolute very least, if we could put all of this information into some sort of tool that allowed us to share the information more efficiently, it would at least make our lives a little bit less stressful. And fast forward, here we are today, sitting in different rooms. I am in New Orleans. You are in your office in Toronto. But we have some wonderful findings to share with people from our results from the property management software Selector tool. And before we dive into the top suggestions, I would just like to know, how do you feel about where we are at with this tool compared to where we were at, let's say, a year ago?
Well, when you first approached me, and it was at Heather's conference, the last one in Toronto, you said this is such a needy part of the vacation rental world, that this will serve people. And when I first heard it, I thought, I'm not so sure, but you just were so adamant that this would take off, and you've been the prophet, because people have they love this tool.
It's crazy. You and I will have conversations hours upon hours, and the completions just keep rolling in. People keep filling out the entire survey, and we keep looking at the results and saying, dang, that's very accurate.
What really took me by surprise was the number. I knew that we would help the people with the 1 to 50 property count, but the property managers with hundreds and hundreds of properties that they have experience with software, that have embraced this, they've taken the test and they broke it down. So that they're searching, they're unhappy with what they have, they're looking for a better product. And that's the one thing that I take the most pride in, is that people with hundreds of properties have embraced this as well.
Yeah, amen. And for those of you who are new to this tool, I just like to remind folks that it is not perfect by any means. We are constantly working to improve it. It is not the de facto best way. In fact, we recommend that the suggestions that are provided merely become inputs in your decision-making process. That said, we started to observe some really interesting trends. And last week we shared some of the trends about the owners and managers that were filling out the survey, what priorities they were placing above others, and that was really interesting. But today we wanted to share which of the softwares were being suggested most frequently. And I think it's important to remind folks that this is not suggesting these are the best softwares, period. We think we are making a pretty good assessment, but what these suggestions are these are the softwares that were being suggested most frequently based on the priorities of the owners and managers inputting and the proprietary matching algorithm that we created. So again, these are not the de facto best softwares. These are merely what we have ranked as the strongest, matched with the priorities that owners and managers claim are important. And Terry, I would like to actually go through all of these properties very briefly each, because we could just go on about this forever. And I would like to maybe ask you to just share with me a single iconic, powerful statement that you feel about each of these property management softwares, with the hope that people can take deeper dives and learn more on their own. Does that sound like a plan?
That's good with me. I'm ready.
All right. Excellent. So yes, we have broken our suggestions down into 4 major groups. The first group is property management softwares that are designed and optimal for owners and managers based in Europe. And that category actually has two groups: the property management softwares that are based on owners and managers with 1 to 50 properties in Europe. And the second are owners and managers with 50 plus properties based in Europe. The other two categories are very similar: owners and managers with 1 to 50 properties based in North America, and owners and managers with 50 plus properties based in North America. We divided this up geographically because of a number of different reasons, but primarily phone support and where the property management company was based tended to coincide with a better relationship with the owner or manager. So let's start off with our 1 to 50 property count software suggestions based in Europe. And starting off with Vreezy. Tell me a single statement, your feelings about Vreezy.
It's a very strong software in that property count there. Their strength is upselling. Nobody does a better job, I don't think, of upselling. And their guest portal, their guest digital handbook, it's probably the best I've ever seen. And that is by far their biggest strength.
And Vreezy, if I'm not mistaken, it was created by Martin Picard, yes, another Inner Circle member. So yes, that's wonderful to hear, keeping it in the family. Let's move on. What about Guesty? Guesty
they have such a bright future. I don't think anybody does a better job of marketing than Guesty does. They're able to secure some major funding. Their business model is they want to be the standalone solution, meaning they don't want to be dependent. It's so fragmented now, the PMS market, that everyone's dependent. They're integrating with everyone else, but they want to be the standalone software. And I really think that they have just such a great future.
Excellent. And when you say marketing themselves?
Yes, marketing their product. Yes, for sure.
Excellent. And they're based in Israel, right? Guesty?
They are.
Cool.
Yes.
Cool. The third top suggestion for managers with 1 to 50 properties in Europe was Elena. Tell me about Elena.
It's one of my favorite softwares. You know, it has some weaknesses, but it is such an all-around good software, good support, and I know people with 100, maybe 50 properties or more, even though it competes in the 1 to 50 category, it also competes in that. I know managers who use it, and it's a very, very good, affordable software.
I like these softwares that sort of transcend property counts, that
yes,
are able to serve one core group really well, but also are starting to serve another core group really well. That's kind of a cool DNA, I think.
Yeah, a lot of times too, what you'll see further to that is they all have their strengths and weaknesses. And some softwares in the 1 to 50 property count, they do things better than PMSs in the 50 to 100 property count, but it's not consistent. So they have some really good features. They're just not consistent enough to be in that 50 plus property count.
Interesting. And it's also worth mentioning, you made me think of something. We've sort of lumped the softwares from 1 to 50 and 50 plus together. Each of those two into two
yes,
categories. Because we originally asked owners and managers, how many properties do you have? And we found that even if they had, whether they had 2 properties or 20 or 40, the same software suggestions ended up being matched. And therefore, we decided to kind of create these broad categories of 1 to 50 and 50 plus. Let's move into 50 plus properties in Europe. These are property managers who are based in Europe and or the surrounding areas. And there were 3 top suggestions: Kigo, again Vreezy, and again Guesty. And I'm going to skip Vreezy and Guesty. Well, maybe actually let's just address them briefly because it is tailoring to a different size company. But let's start off with Kigo. This was your top suggestion.
Kigo, it is by far the strongest software that we found in Europe, has very few weaknesses. Everybody's favorite pastime seems to be to trash talk Kigo software. I have no reason.
Why?
I have no idea, because it's a great software. And well, I do know why, but their pain is self-inflicted. the knock against them is their customer support. But you have told me, things are going better there. They're turning things around, putting an emphasis on customer service. But that aside, Kigo is a fantastic software, and it was by far the strongest out of the three.
So you're saying that the customer service had a bad reputation, but in
Yes,
terms of actual performance, it blew everyone else out of the water.
It did, unequivocally. Yes.
Cool. Vreezy, were there any elements of Vreezy that you think made it stand out for 50 plus properties based out of Europe?
Again, Europe is kind of unrepresented. It's not, North America has much more to choose from. But like Vreezy, like I just said before, they do so many things good, not enough consistently across the board. One thing is what you'll find, and we're going to talk about this probably later, is trust accounting. There's not too many companies with over 50 to 100 property counts that want to get involved with a PMS software that doesn't have trust accounting. They're just that dependent on it.
And Guesty, I'm guessing you said that they have maybe the brightest future. That probably makes a lot of sense for property managers with 50 plus properties. You're kind of wanting to align yourself with a company that's going to be around for a long time.
Oh yeah. Again, I just see them just having the brightest future. I really like what they're doing over there. The products, the way that they market themselves. The disappointing part that I find with Breezy was I was recommending, Guesty, I was recommending them to a lot of people, and then they would come back and say, sorry, we're not taking anyone who doesn't have at least 3 properties. And for me, that was really disappointing. And I didn't, and personally, I don't think that they should be doing that at this time in the game for them.
Why would they? I mean, I suppose I understand it. You've only got limited resources. And you, in some cases, can't cater to everybody. But what's the argument here? What would those people with less than 3 properties be contributing?
Well, I guess it must come down to the onboarding and training. There must be so much resources in it that it takes so much time and money to train people. But again, to me, this is really disappointing. And we talked about Europe is not near as strong as North America, and I just think they're making a mistake there.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That said, Guesty and Vreezy, you did make 2 top performing lists. So
yes,
we are nitpicking in a sense. Let's move across the pond to North America for suggestions for people with 1 to 50 properties. We have Hostfully, Get Direct, and Logix. Let's start off with Logix. Let's switch it up a little bit because each of these 3 softwares are all really interesting. Tell me about Logix.
Logix, it's very good, affordable software, has so many good qualities to it, attributes to it, automations, work orders, booking status, all the things that you're looking for in a PMS. They're strong in that 1 to 50 property count category, and it's kind of an there's not a lot to choose from between the 1 to 50 property count in North America. But they were by far, them, Get Direct, and Hostfully were far and above everyone else.
Let's move into Get Direct. I personally had actually never heard of it. What's your feeling about it?
They have a very strong future for sure. Right now, they're in the 1 to 50 property count category. I see the future that they're going to be in the over 50. What they try to do too is they want to be standalone. They're not doing a lot of integrations with other companies, and they're relatively new. It's kind of a slow moving process. But when I did the demo with them, I said we should revisit this, in 6 months, because I can see that this is just going in the right direction in a hurry.
Interesting. So in that sense, Get Direct with this independent wanting to create their own standalone platform is similar to Guesty in a way? Or at least aspirations?
Yes, and they have their own reasons, but they just don't want to be dependent on other integrations.
Well, amen to that.
Yeah.
Okay, and our third suggestion, the top suggestion, actually, for owners and managers with 1 to 50 properties in North America was Hostfully, which is formerly known as Orbi Rentals. In fact, if people have taken the survey and been presented with the suggestions, it came out as Orbi Rentals just because we haven't gotten around to updating it just yet. But you are like in love with Hostfully.
I really am. It's one of
you talk about it all the time.
I know. It's one of the best softwares, period, I have ever seen, and it just happens to be inexpensive. And I don't want people to confuse it as seeing it as an inexpensive good software. It's anything but. It's a fantastic software that happens to be inexpensive. And we found it in our research that it is the one and only PMS that can compete in the 1 to 50 property count and the 50 plus property count. And anyone else in that 1 to 50 property count did not even remotely come close to touching Hostfully software. It is that good.
So what are the elements of the software that allow it to do both of those categories? Because they seem like two totally different spheres.
The only reason that I see that they're not in the 50 to 100 property count is trust accounting. If they had trust accounting, like we talked about before, people with 100 properties, they're so dependent on trust accounting, and it's so important to them. And we have found in our research too, the people that answered yes to trust accounting with the 1 to 50 property count was one of the most, that took me by surprise the most. Obviously, they're good with mathematics, they're good with numbers, and it was just as important to them as it was to the 50 plus property count. But getting back to Hostfully, they really have no weakness. Everything, whether it's channel management, customizable rates, revenue management, I could go on and on. Like pretty much everything that you're looking for in a software, it offers.
Interesting. And we did not take any bribes, but I will also say that David and Steph are two Inner Circle members. Those are two of the minds behind Hostfully. So again, great to see our community leaders paving the way. That's wonderful to see. Moving into the 50 plus property count in North America. These are the heavy hitters. These are the big boys. These are the sluggers of our industry. And we have 3 softwares that were suggested the most frequently. Streamline, Track, and VRM. Let's start with Track. Tell me about Track, because I know this is one of your favorites.
Track, to me, is the future of vacation rental software. The reason I say that is it is built around 3 components. First, the CRM. Okay. It's the way that you collect data, you track data, you retarget people, whether it's through email, phone calls, text messaging, any mode of communication, it tracks. And you hear it a million times a day in the vacation rental sector is who owns the guest. Mm-hmm. And I really think that is what they're doing there. I think they're years ahead of anyone else. And their software isn't necessarily better than anyone else's, but their emphasis on the CRM, I think, is where the future is of this business.
That's kind of like a pillar almost of their. And what are the other? You said it's based on 3 things. The one is the CRM. What are the other?
The booking engine, so the website, what their interface and what they do, and the importance that they put on the ease of going through the booking process. That's what they really do. And as far as their PMS goes, they will integrate with other PMSs like Streamline, like Escapia. So they don't care if you use their PMS. Their 2 big strengths are their CRM and their booking engine.
And so the third thing was the property management component?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And it's, it's good. It's not better than Streamline or anyone else. It's the emphasis on the CRM. I think that sets them apart. And I think it's the future. Yeah.
Interesting. Let's get back to Track in a moment, because we have some special award for them. What about VRM? What do you think? What does that stand for? First of all, is it vacation rental?
Vacation resort management, something like that. I don't know. Okay. I just go by the way. It is, to me, it's the strongest and most affordable in the 50 plus property count. And what I mean is it's a great software across the board. Doesn't matter, customized rates, channel management, unified inbox, owner portal, guest portal, insurance, trust accounting, texting, all that kinds of upselling. all that kind of stuff. But what it's different from that, and what makes it so affordable, is like Escapia. Escapia narrowly missed this third place finish here, but they do not charge the integrated channel fee, which, taking 1 to 2% per booking, it doesn't sound like a lot, but I'll tell you how significant it is. For me to use VRM would be $735 a month with my property count. So then the software that I'm using, it costs me $300 a month. However, the integrated channel fee doubles it. For example, in January, I got a bill for over $1,300 just for channel integration. So it's that channel integrated fee is a killer.
I actually did not know about that. And
Yes.
May I just say, I love how enthusiastic you are about all of this. It is really quite something to be admired. Okay, so let's move on to the third and final, and actually the top ranking suggestion for people with 50 plus properties in North America, and that is Streamline. Tell me about Streamline.
Yeah. I love that. I just love that software. It has no weakness. So, you go through the list of what components make a good PMS, again, customizable rate, channel management, unified inbox, guest insurance, guest portal, owner portal, trust accounting, upselling, the cleaning module, the integrations that they do with revenue management, with cleaning apps. It just, you could go on. It's to me, it's a standalone PMS for sure.
One of the things I would like to remind folks is that none of the softwares that we've gone through today are flawless. None of them are perfect. All of them have their glitches. All of them have their problems. Amongst all the ones you've just been describing to me, Terry, I've heard plenty of really great feedback from people, but I've also heard people who are upset or frustrated. And I think one of my big takeaways here is that no software is going to be without some sorts of challenges. However, if you can bank on a software that has the right fundamental features and the right attitude and individuals behind the scenes, you can at least sort of get through this difficult adjustment period, technologically speaking. We, Terry and myself, after all of these conversations over the course of the last few months, found ourselves talking about two softwares that we thought deserved a little extra attention. And the first was one that we've actually mentioned both of them. I'd like first to talk about the software of the future, and that is Track. Terry, would you mind just kind of re-summarizing why you think Track deserves this sort of standout acclaim?
Well, being built around the CRM it's just
a game changer.
It's a game changer, and you look companies like Marriott with the rewards program. You hear you're on Skift. You hear about who owns the guest, how do you the retention, how do you retain your guest, the guest experience. It's just this they've got it covered here. They see the future for sure.
And is it fair to say that they are built more or less around a CRM? That's a fundamental. That's the foundation of the software. You can't just take another software and inject a little bit of CRM into it and make it the same, right? It's like a part of its DNA.
Yes, and it's so strong right now. The CRMs in the vacation run, you could never do what they're doing with MailChimp, Constant Contact, any of those. It's impossible to do what they're doing, even if there is an integration with other CRMs at this time. They are just standalone by themselves on top of the world here.
Amazing. Well, congrats to Track on that. I had never heard of Track before I started hearing you talk about it nonstop.
Yeah.
Our other big standout award went to what you're calling the best all-around software, and that's Hostfully. Give us another sort of high-level overview of your thoughts about them in this space.
This is something I'll never forget. When Steph was on holidays, so David did the demo with me, and so when I'm doing a demo, I have we're doing a screen share, so I've got my big Mac here. It's a 27-inch Mac. I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, and I've got.
You mean a computer, right? Not a sandwich.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here, and then I've got my laptop beside me, and I'm scoring the software as we go. So
did you tell them? By the way, in all these demos, did you tell the people that you were going to be scoring them on the side?
Well, not exactly scoring them, but I was going through every feature of it, and I was putting it down so they knew what I was doing. And we're doing a screen share.
Okay, go on.
But with David, so to demo a good software, it takes a minimum of 90 minutes, and that's just scraping the surface of it. If it's middle of the road software, you can get 60 minutes, but for good software, it takes 90 minutes. So when David, when it was done, when we were at the 90-minute mark, I said, I got to stop. I got to get some work done here. We could have went on for another 90 minutes. But I remember I sat back in my chair, and I looked out my window, and I looked back at my screen. I looked out the window again. David said to me, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "I wasn't ready for this." I said, "This took me by surprise." I said, "I was totally unprepared for this." And then he said to me, I can't remember, it was later in the day or the next morning, he sent me an email. I said, "Thanks for your time." He said, "If you have any suggestions, don't be shy. Any comments, any criticism, don't be shy." And I said, "I don't have any criticism. I just have one observation." And I said, "You don't know how good your software is." And he said, "Wow, yeah, it is that good." Yeah, and it could compete in the 1 to 50, 50 to 100 easily. There's no other software in the 1 to 50 that even remotely could touch that software.
Interesting. And I think this is a nice segue sort of out of our conversation and into, so Hostfully and Track, two of these sort of standout softwares, apart from all the other wonderful suggestions that we've gone through, are not part of what's known as this GSV rollup. And I'm going to very, very briefly summarize this. Terry, please correct me if I say something that's wrong. But a company called Global Sum Ventures, I think it's called, has been sort of snatching up property management softwares. And we're not going to go through each of them right now. However, we will place an asterisk next to each of the companies in our Keystone project that is now associated with GSV. Just so people know. And Terry, what is the implication of a software being that has performed really well in your rankings and suggested to plenty of people? What are the implications for the owner or the manager of that being rolled up into one entity?
Yeah, to me, it's scary. I would never get involved. If I was looking for a software, I would never get involved with one that is part of that roll-up. But if I was currently, let's say I was using Streamline, which was handsome, I wouldn't be freaking out about it. But it really does scare me. And but for me,
wait a minute, you just said you would never get involved, and then you said you wouldn't freak out about it.
But if I was already there and using it, it wouldn't. I see. It wouldn't want to make me run out the door and find another. I see.
So for choosing a new software,
choosing a new software, I would never get involved in that. But to me, it is the most disappointing part of vacation rental software, PMS or whatever you want to call it. Here is the movement has grown so fast, and thanks to you, by the way, but it's grown so fast. And we were all hoping that the technology would grow as fast with it, and it really hasn't. So the hope that was out there that there was bigger and better coming, I think, is on the shelf. I don't see it. And to me, this is the most disappointing part that I've heard of vacation rental software in a long time.
Well, let me ask you this: what would you say to the argument that these companies now have more resources that they can invest towards improvements?
It's a valid question. Could it be? I'm not buying it. They stated they want to roll it up and get rid of it. They just bought iTrip. I don't know why they would do something like that. But for me, it's the uncertainty of the future that would really scare me. Who are they going to sell it to, and then what are they going to do with it when they sell it? Mm-hmm. That just. But to me, I see in that elite PMS category, I see some really weak softwares that are between 9 and 19 years old. They have kind of grandfathered. They were the first ones on the market. People with 200, 300,000 properties are using them. And the only reason they're using them is because they started with them. The pain point for changing with hundreds of properties is so great. But I was really thinking and hoping that something bigger and better would force their hand, that they would have to choose a new software. But to me, this is just a step backwards.
So could this also mean that maybe some of the other guys who are up and coming have a newfound sense of opportunity, and for the owners and managers looking to some of the companies that are not part of the roll-up, present all kinds of new options?
I would say so. There's not a lot of new softwares that are really good enough. Right. That are good enough for the people with hundreds, 1,000 property counts. Yeah, to me, this is just really, really disappointing.
And we also went through a number of softwares in this ranking process that you just did not feel were up to snuff. And those were, of course, included in the matrix, but there was a number of softwares that we did not mention today that are also part of the ecosystem. And let's not write them off either. I think everybody is evolving. What's your advice to an owner or manager who's looking for a software solution at this point? Without saying any specific suggestions, what is your general philosophical advice?
You really have to do your homework, and the best way to narrow it down and you can use our tool. I think the strength in our tool is identifying the 3 or 4 best matches, the strongest ones. So I think get into a demo with them, but be prepared when you get to your demo. And the best way to prepare is ask the company for access to their video library, where they have pretty much a video on everything. If you can't find it, go on YouTube and find it. And be prepared when you get to your demo, because if you're prepared and you have a pretty good understanding of the software, you're going to get so much more out of the demo. But break it down to 3 or 4, do your homework, and be prepared.
And of course, what we've also learned is that one module, as it is termed in one company, may outperform the same quote-unquote module in another company, which is where our tool comes in very handy. For those of you who are on the software side of the industry, feel free to let us know when you've got updates to certain elements of your software. We now have the ability to update our matrix. And to owners and managers who have changes in their own priorities, the tool is a great place to start. Please don't email Terry asking him for his own personal input until at least you have utilized the tool. And in that email, you will find Terry's personal email, and you can ask him for any follow-up questions if it is a case in which you need some additional assistance. He is open to doing that too. Terry, I would just like to say thank you on behalf of course, myself and VRMB and the Inner Circle community, because you are always in there just helping. But also on behalf of the broader vacation rental industry, because what you have managed to do here is really just, I think, so important. And like you said at our first discussion, this landscape is so confusing to so many people, and so few people enjoy it as much as you do, that your simplification of everything, your unbiased and objective way of looking at things, of removing emotion from the equation entirely and looking at something 100% objectively, is such a valuable thing. And I believe the tool, in its ability to suggest new options for individuals looking to either switch or start off with a new property management software, it's going to save people so much time. And the fact that you have done this so elegantly, to me, deserves an award of your own. So I'm going to make you like a cake or something.
Okay, I appreciate that. I could talk software and demo software all day. I love it.
And is it fair to say that the software landscape has a lot on its horizon?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it will grow, for sure. It will grow with us. It will grow with the vacation rental movement, for sure, unequivocally.
Amazing. Well, let's leave it at that. This is a new form of podcast, and I think utilizing this medium to talk about important things that we are releasing, in this particular case, the property management software Selector tool under the tutelage of Mr. Terry Whyte. I think this went really well, and thank you, Terry, for your wonderful industry contributions.
Thanks for having me.